All right, we are live with our 38th best season of Survivor with your host James Hansen and Michael Schaefer. How you doing tonight, Michael?
Good.
All right,
Both my teams won tonight. I'm happy.
yeah. So the Knicks have won 7 in a row, but Mets lost tonight. But we'll be all right. We aren't hitting, but
Well,
get
neither the Yankees, and we fucking
all right.
suck.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But anyways, our 38th best season of Survivor, like we said last week, if you listened, a lot of you probably could have predicted this is a bad season, and that is season 5, Survivor Thailand. So let's just get your history on the season like we have with some of the others. You were too young pretty probably when this season was on.
I was
You
3
didn't
years old when the season started.
Yeah, so I was 7 years old, and I actually like vaguely remember watching it. Like my first season, I remember like vaguely was season 2, but this season was like I could vaguely like remember like the location being like real spooky, like kind of like the vibes it gives. Like the tribal council setting is very unique. It's very spooky. The cast is unlikable, so it makes it even more like dark and spookier. And I actually remember like sort of watching the season, but like nothing like too detailed because I was 7 years old. But like I remember the night of the finale. I guess I was in second grade and I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and my parents are both Survivor fans too. So I asked my dad who won, and he told me Brian won. And I was like, oh, like whatever, that's cool. Like there was no DVR, like nothing to record it at the time. So I was like, all right, Brian won. Didn't really know like in detail about what he was like really as a person or as a player. Was too young to acknowledge that. So yeah, this was my second time rewatching it in the past 2 years. So I
Yeah,
had no expectations.
Yeah, I had only seen it once beforehand, like because obviously, like I didn't start watching Survivor until I forget what age I was. I think 7. So like at some point, like, I really started getting into it. I went back and watched it. It was awful. So like I hadn't rewatched it again. So this when I just rewatched it now, it's the first time I've watched it in a long time.
So when was the first time you watched it, you said?
I was a freshman in high school, so probably 14.
All right. So do you remember disliking it then?
Yes.
Okay. And
because like I had never seen it because like I didn't really know like how bad it was because I didn't really want to look at anything. Like I knew Brian had won, but like I didn't know like what happened and how everything went down. And so when I rewatched it, I'm like, this is bad.
you know
Like there's nothing good here.
predictable it was after the merge,
Very
or
predictable.
how little strategy there was the entire season.
And how terrible most of these people were that they casted.
Yeah. So like this is my thing. All right. So this is season 5. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Our first 4 seasons, can you agree? We had
excellent casts.
Excellent cast. Like they might have not been like they might not hold up great on a rewatch. Like Borneo, Africa, Australian Outback are like kind of like a little boring on a rewatch for me. Like at least when I watched them a couple years ago, but
the characters they have there are like top tier.
Yes. So that's the thing. So, and then I think Marquesas is a little better strategically than those first 3, but that's a different story. But anyways, like I said, those first 4 casts, they hit home runs. Like they casted likable people and people with like crazy jobs, like just crazy backgrounds, like people with great grasp of like life and a lot of life experience. Like this season, they just did not hit the cast, and it was pretty.
It was a swing and a miss pretty early.
Yeah. All right,
so just before we keep going, each on our own lists, I had Survivor Thailand at number 37, and James had it at number 38.
Yeah. So we won't say the season that we have not revealed that you had lower than that, but do you think this will go below it once we're said and done, or no?
Might go below One World, but not below that other one.
All right, so I'll give my thoughts on that later. But okay. So getting into the first episode, what do you think? So there's a schoolyard pick.
I like the schoolyard pick. I
I
really do.
really, I really like the schoolyard pick, and it kind of seemed like originally when they did that, that Sukjai picked the better tribe.
Yeah, it definitely see that Sukjai got the better like challenge players. Like they got Rob, they got Ken,
They got the
and then
younger tribe,
meanwhile when
Jed,
you look at
even
Jed, yeah, and then when you look at
Kenny.
Chewy they got a bunch. They got like Clay, they have Jan, they have. I know she's pretty good at challenges, but Helen's a little older.
Yeah,
And then it's like
Gandia,
Gandia, yeah, but it's like Chewy was like when
Jake.
they
I
matched up
mean,
the challenges.
not Jake.
Yeah,
John.
John.
Yeah, yeah. They. It looked like Jake drafted a better team than Jan did. I think
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
And
And
it
then
showed early.
some of the people like Brian was like a later pick in that like draft thing, and that's just kind of a joke. Like he probably should have been like the first one picked, but
I think that the guys picked for Chewy, I think Ted was picked first, and then John, then Brian, then Clay.
yeah, that's what Clay and Rob were the last two guys picked. I know.
Insane. I can't believe Rob lasted that long on there.
Yeah, maybe they just didn't like his appearance. Like he kind of, I don't know. We'll get into Rob a little bit later.
I was gonna say when we start getting into the show, there's other reasons to not. There's reasons to not like Rob, but that's not one of them.
All right, so my initial thoughts, like on the rewatch, like very good location, very good. Like doesn't matter to me as much as other things, but Thailand is one of the better locations I think they had for the show. Like I like the caves at the camp. Like they didn't even really need to build shelters when they had the caves, so it was kind of like interesting to see it that way. But like the location's good, and when I rewatch this, there's a little bit of nostalgia, which makes me feel a little bit better than One World or Redemption Island, where there isn't as much nostalgia, but it's still like I did not have great expectations going into this at all. At all.
Yeah, it's rough when you know it's not going to be good, and then you have to watch it, and then you forget how rough it actually is.
All right, so yeah, the first episode, there's like basically you see originally you think Suchai has the stronger tribe, and then they go into the challenge, and I think it's a water like puzzle challenge. Like they had a couple of those beginning of the season.
Yeah, so they had their boat. They had to row their boat to each like 3 stations
Yeah,
and complete one thing at each station before they keep going and get back to Jeff. And so Chewy had the lead for most of that challenge until they got to the slide puzzle part, and Gandia completely
yeah,
whiffed on it.
she whiffed bad. But then, all right, so after this, Chewy Gon's going to tribal first, and John kind of shoots himself in the foot because the whole tribe wants to go off together, and he decides to just say like, nah, I'm just gonna sit here and screw it, I'm just gonna stay alone. And that's social suicide in Survivor. And
That's the definition of a rookie mistake.
yeah, that dude just didn't know the game. And I guess it's early in the seasons, like a lot of these people might have not really known the game, but like he
But it's
should
not
have
just,
known better than that. Yeah,
I was gonna say, it's not just do you really know the game? It's what part of you does not think of, oh hey, this is a social game. Like you need to talk to people. I should talk to these people instead of being like, nah, I'm good. Like what has that ever worked for anybody in this game?
yeah, it just shows you this cast is pretty much full of idiots, I think, aside from a couple people.
I was gonna say there's a couple of good people, but besides
Yeah,
that, yet.
but like it's like, yeah, that dude shot himself in the foot right away. He probably like going based on what happened later with Ted, Brian, and Clay. I don't think they would have voted against a man right away if they didn't do that stuff right away based on the stuff they said about women. Like it was just like I think John kind of shot himself in the foot there. And all right, so like going back to this first episode based on our last two podcast with our worst 2 seasons, I think this was the worst first episode.
Mhm.
Like, I think Redemption Island and One World started out a little stronger, but these first two episodes were like kind of a drag to me. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't get into it right away, and it's just tough.
Yeah. For like, at least for me, like for a good Survivor season, you have to have like a strong premiere and a strong merge episode. Like if you don't have one, then you're kind of falling. If you don't have either, it's just it's bad.
And this season
And
doesn't have either.
yeah, but the funniest thing is when you look at Redemption Island, this premiere episode strong, the merge episode strong, and the rest of the season is just so bad it drags it down.
I was
That
gonna
kind
say
of
that
could throw
too.
in my whole argument.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too, but like yeah. I think the other thing with this season is like you could easily see right away that like usually the first episode you could pick out like a handful of people that you're rooting for. And this season I didn't really get that. Like there's just not, like we said, there's not many likable people. And I could kind of see it from the first episode. Like you want to root for Ken. Like this is a year after 9/11. It's cool. He's a New York City police officer. Like I think that's who Survivor wanted America to root for. But like Ken's a nice
He
guy.
was
Like
so
he's an
bland.
okay player, but like he doesn't give you that much. Like that, but like they just don't give you really anyone to root for, and it's
No.
tough.
It's funny because when you look at the Sukjai tribe, like yes, they're like good and challenged. They have that. There's like no personality on that tribe at
No,
all.
there's more
Two
going on at
people.
Chewy.
There's two people on all Sukjai that gives you any sort of television. It's Robin. It's Sheehan. That's
It's Rob
it.
and Sheehan, yeah. All right, so let's get past that first episode and
Actually,
go.
before we keep going, I want to point out one thing. In
All
this,
right,
not just in the premiere episode, it goes on most of the season. Why, after the immunity challenges, there are 3 minutes before tribal council?
yeah, all right. So
That annoyed the shit out of me, and I
I was gonna
forgot it
say
was that
that
short.
the next episode, but yeah, I didn't really think of that when we were going into these rewatches, but yeah, it's tough. It's like they spend so much time like pre reward challenge on like kind of like just camp nonsense, and then they got the reward challenge, and then they have some more camp nonsense, no strategy talk before the immunity challenge, and then after the immunity challenge they just like maybe talk like brief like no complex strategy, but like just a little bit of strategy for like you said 2 minutes, and then it's tribal. It's like it's so different than what it is today. Not even just today, like even like by the time like, so I can't remember which season it really changed, because I remember I watched All Stars sort of recently, and it was kind of the same thing in All Stars. So I want to say like,
I don't remember it being that bad in All Stars, but
yeah, it wasn't that bad, but it was still short. But I want to say around like uh maybe like Cook Islands, Panama, like 12, 13 is when they really started to put more emphasis on discussing the votes like
putting
after
more time
after the
between.
immunity challenge and before tribal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is bullshit how they don't give you much at all. So anyways, all right, get to the second episode, and there we see that I don't know, I thought it was interesting at first. I wrote this down, like remember in the early seasons they all had luxury items, like
Mhm.
they were playing like golf at the camp and stuff. Like
Yeah, because Clay brought a golf club and
he
a golf ball
brought a
for
golf
his.
club, and Brian brought a guitar, and I know later on he was playing it and he was drunk, I think, and they were like, yeah, it was awful, like whatever he was playing. But yeah, the luxury items are interesting, but like it's kind of just an old school Survivor thing now. Doesn't mean too much, but
Rob brought a skateboard for his
yeah, he did. And what are you gonna do with a fucking skateboard on
on a beach.
beach? Yeah, I remember when I was listening to the Rob has a podcast like recap of this season like a couple months ago about this. Rob C said the same thing. He was like, yeah, like why the hell is this guy bringing a skateboard onto a beach? Like, what? There's literally nothing you could do with it. But that's Rob with two B's in a nutshell, basically,
He's a
which
character.
is, which is funny. All right, but yeah. Anyways, episode 2 was not really
Good.
nothing groundbreaking or special to me either, besides from the fact that you think that Sukjai is like on their way to dominating, which they kind of did at the beginning, but it wasn't gonna last. And the show made you like believe, I guess if you were watching it at the time, that Sukjai was gonna be the dominant tribe. And I want to say this challenge was very similar to the first immunity challenge. It was another like puzzle and like water thing.
Yeah, except instead of like rowing the boat, you had to individually swim to go get all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sukjai wins again, and Clay's pretty pissed about like them not performing. This speaks more about Clay too. He's the type that like won't help you in challenges, but he'll bitch about people not doing any, like not helping in challenges. Like I think he's just a hypocrite, and
Yep.
he's not a good player.
We'll get more into Clay. I have a lot of things to say about Clay.
Yeah, me too. So this vote, it's basically they're saying it's either Helen or Gandia, or not Gandia, Tanya, because Tanya is sick and she's not feeling well, and Helen, I guess, is just rubbing a few people the wrong way because
That was
I
more
like
Gandia
Helen.
who wanted Helen out.
Yeah, Gandia was the one who wanted Helen out. She thought Helen was bossy, and I mean, it wasn't a terrible swing, but like it also was like Tanya was such an easy vote there where she was sick. She was lucky she wasn't the first boot because John was just
Because
such a
John was so bad.
he was such an idiot. That's the only reason. So she goes home, pretty predictable. So who voted? I think Gandia voted for Helen this vote.
Gandia did vote for Helen, yeah.
So it was a 5-2 vote. And I think it's another weak episode. Like I think the first 2 episodes were bad. Unlike
I totally agree.
One World and Redemption Island, like the seasons were very bad, but I think that
the starts were pretty good.
The starts were more promising than this start.
Mm-hmm.
This start wasn't promising, and I think the couple episodes before the merge are the strongest ones of the whole season. But these first few episodes are just not very good. All right. So we'll get to episode 3, which is another pretty weak episode, I think. So Sukjai is dominating the challenges, but they're feeling pretty weak around camp. They're not feeling good.
The shelter sucks, and so when the shelter sucks, they can't get much sleep, especially with the shitty conditions they had.
Yeah, and they're not this like just tribe that is winning challenges that is just like happy-go-lucky. They're not like
they can't get along either.
They're not feeling great, and they can't get along. So going into this is the episode where the Ted and Gandia situation really starts to come into light. And I just want to hear your thoughts on it before I give my thoughts, because I'm kind of in a gray area with this, but I definitely have some things to say.
So definitely what I think about this, like, it's definitely like I'm actually surprised like a show back in 2002 would bring this up. Like I'm happy they did, because it's like,
yeah,
obviously if this is how she felt, they need to show it. But it's like when you're getting 2 sides of the story and it's 2 different sides, like I don't know which side the show wanted to make you believe, because I don't even think they knew what was the actual truth.
Yeah, and I don't think they handled it as well either. Like
they didn't.
They obviously, like in 2019, in Island of the Idols, they handled it horribly, and that was probably a much worse situation than what happened here. But I think that at least in that situation, they tried to like give you the truth. Where here, it was kind of just in the middle. Like you never really it seemed like Survivor didn't want you to know the truth about what happened.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Like this happened. We don't know what actually happened.
We
We're going to play it
really
off like we
don't.
don't actually know what happens.
We don't. So getting into it for people listening, Gandia woke up one morning and said that Ted, who was a married man, she's a married woman, said that Ted was up against her, grinding on her while she was sleeping. And Ted basically, when he got accused of it, said she was crazy and said it did not happen. Nothing happened. Like, might have been in my sleep and rolled over and like touched you, but I was sleeping and I don't know what's happening then. So like,
But what he
I
originally
just
said, she confronted him first
yeah.
and said what she thought happened. And at least to me, it seemed like when he was talking to her that he was very apologetic. Like, that's not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't trying to do that, but if it did, I'm sorry, whatever. And then he immediately runs off to, I think it was Brian.
Brian, yeah.
And said like, oh, she's crazy. That didn't happen. I don't know what she's trying to do to me. And then obviously Gandia finds out and is pissed.
Yeah. So it got real ugly after that and carried into the next episode. And Gandia, I believe, also said she like had been like sexually like assaulted before or something.
Yeah,
so
she did, and they brought that up in the show too.
That makes it worse and more sensitive for her. And I feel like since this was 2002, it's just different than it would be today. And I think it wasn't handled as well as it would have been today, which is kind of ironic considering how Island of the Idols was
horribly that was handled.
But yeah, I'd like to believe that we would have at least saw like which side like was correct with this. We never really saw.
I feel like we would have gotten a lot more of the story.
Yeah.
Today.
And I feel like the story here was more pro Ted than pro Gandia. And I think in reality it was more neutral or
pro Gandia.
Gandia, yeah. And they just didn't paint it in that light at all. But anyways, moving on from that, we have maybe, in my opinion, the greatest moment of the entire season. And that's the attack zone challenge, which is classic because of how dumb these people were.
So Jeff basically explains before the challenge starts. Here's this completely color-coded area.
Black
like the
area.
whole, it was colored in black. The whole rest of the course was bamboo, like regular, like so orange, yellow, purple. You can only make contact with someone on the other tribe if you're in this area, like this colored off area. And then here comes Rob with 2 Bs choking out Clay outside the.
And they did it like, all right, so Rob did it. I think Jed did it.
And I think Ken did it.
Ken did it. They all fucked up. Mm-hmm. And they had a lead early in the challenge too.
They were up huge. But then the whole rule was Jeff told them if you make contact out to the attack zone, you're out of the challenge, and one of your items gets given to the other tribe.
So I think this also speaks in behalf of how like just the way Jeff like his attitude is some of the season. Like he hates the season. He hates it. Like
he doesn't hide it either.
Oh,
how much he hates the season.
Oh yeah. And like during this challenge, like just like, come on, like you're outside the attack zone. Like, what are you doing? Like he never seems that pissed, and he was fucking pissed. Like
Stephanie also got disqualified from that challenge for outside the attack zone. So it was four people. Things that Sukjai had were just gifted to Chewy God.
Yeah. Oh God. And it was funny too. I also think like there was one moment where I think Brian was actually inside the attack zone, but he just threw Sheehan into the water, and I'm just like, yeah, this just shows Brian's personality. Like, he'll just literally toss women in the water.
Brian's such a scumbag.
Oh God. Brian. We'll get into him more in a little bit. All right, so after this, we're here, and I get the vibe. You start to see a little bit of Rob Z start to play out, like his personality. Like he starts getting angry. He calls Clay a backwoods hick. Like he starts getting bitter about the challenge, and Sheehan immediately in her confessionals, you see how much she really just does not like Rob. Like, and it's pretty funny the back and forth. Like, I think that's one of the better things about the season, to be honest, just how much these two really just don't like each other. And they're two of my, like you two, they're two of my favorite characters on this season.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're definitely the only two pieces of entertainment from the Sukchar tribe.
Oh yeah, for
they're
sure.
The only two on that tribe to give you anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like when you're comparing for like a lot of people in the season, Sheehan is one of my favorites from the season, and Rob, just from a TV standpoint, is great.
Oh yeah, like Rob is totally not self-aware. He's not a good player. He votes the wrong way, I think. I think he votes for Sheehan 3 times.
Every time he voted for Sheehan.
And the third time he finally goes home. But like I think we were texting about it the other day, and you're like, yeah, like when this guy's on the screen, you just can't look
he's
away.
Must watch when he's on the TV, but it's like, oh God, what's he gonna do now?
So my dream is like one day, like if they ever, maybe season 45 or season 50, if they pre-merge season, bring back Rob Z, I'm all for it. Need some old school representation.
Yeah, don't expect to find anything from Thailand there.
Oh, he's not coming back, but I'm just saying, like, if there was ever a season for him to come back, it would be that. And yeah, he's a bright spot on this season for me, actually.
You got to look for bright spots here.
Yeah. And
looking
like
for a needle in a haystack.
Like, he's like we said, he's so not self-aware, and he's a sore loser, and does not have life experience. He's like a young 23-year-old bartender. Like he just like he just can't connect with a lot of these people, but like it's just funny watching how horribly the game goes for him. Really, like nothing works out for this guy at all.
Ever.
Nothing. All right. So back to after this, we'll go back over to Chewy. And this is when the Tetangandia thing kind of comes up again. And this is where
it gets ugly.
Yeah, I think Gandia tells Helen how she feels about the situation. And then Brian finds out about it. He's kind of playing the middleman. He wants to hear both sides of the story. And like we talked about earlier, we won't get into it too much more, but it's like you never really get like who's right in this situation. I'm leaning more towards Gandia's side, but
so am I.
But I'm not saying that there's no conclusive evidence, and I haven't heard enough from people that were there, because none of these people are like big time. Like I don't think anyone from this season's really active in the Survivor community anymore, so I haven't heard any of them on like podcast or anything like ever.
Yeah, so I don't think any of them ever speak at all.
Yeah, I heard Gandia was on Rob's podcast talking with T-Bird like maybe like last year, but I never listened to it. But I might have to give it a listen, and we'll see how I feel about it after that. But I would like to hear it from someone who was actually there that was not Ted or Gandia, and see how they feel about it. But
well, you got Helen's perspective from it, that she believes Gandia, but
yeah,
you'll see in the next episode what happened with that.
Exactly. Yeah, she knew what she was doing. Mm-hmm. But all right, anyway, so after this is where I wrote down, this is where I start to see the first like winner confessional from Brian. So Brian talks about how like listening is like the best skill. Like I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to say too much. I'm just going to gather in information, which as much as a scumbag as Brian is, He was very good at doing that. He didn't give anything away, and he made these people believe he was a much better person than he actually was.
He's such a scumbag.
He is 100%. But I'm saying he did a good job into fooling these people that he wasn't a scumbag.
He did, absolutely.
Yeah, and like we should have talked about it earlier, but like his job title literally, and he told them all
used car salesman.
I'm a used car salesman. What do you think? You think I'm going to be shady? Like, they don't think this guy's going to be shady. He's a fucking used car salesman.
I say shady is in the job description of used car salesman.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. What part of that doesn't make you think that he's going to lie to you and say to you whatever the fuck he needs to make you believe him?
Yeah. All right. So moving on. After this, Chewy finally wins immunity, and Rob, of course, is making the push for Sheehan.
And he had his tight little group of himself, Stephanie, and Jed.
Yes.
And then it's more Jake and Ken were trying to protect Sheehan.
Yeah, and Penny and Aaron were with him. Jed was really lazy, and in old school Survivor, like nowadays, you still shouldn't be lazy, but old school Survivor, like this is
if you were lazy, you were out.
It's a death sentence. Like you can't not do stuff around camp, especially when you're like, what was Jed? He was a dentist, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Younger, like what was he? Probably like
he was in his 20s, I think.
Yeah, like mid 20s. Like he could have helped them a lot around camp.
He was 25.
25. Okay, just chose to be lazy. And old school Survivor, that's going to get you voted out. 5-3 vote. But I will say, this episode, it was a blindside. Jed did not see that coming at all.
Oh no, the three of them were so cocky that they definitely thought Sheehan was going home.
And in these early seasons, or not early, not even necessarily early, but in our bad seasons, there are not many blindsides. But this was actually a blindside.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm still not saying it was a great episode, but I think
it was better than the first two.
It was way better than the first two episodes. Way better.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next episode was not terrible either. It had a lot of it was very focused on the Ted and Gandia stuff, but it was more interesting. The first two episodes were just so boring that it was more interesting, but
yeah, you couldn't get any lower than the first two.
A lot of ugliness on this season. Like I got that, like Clay saying this is where Clay starts to show his true colors. Like he doesn't feel bad for Gandia at all, even though he doesn't know what happened. Like none of them really know what happened, but it's just like Clay's little like cocky, sarcastic attitude starts to come out, and then they lose the reward challenge, and Clay blames Gandia for the challenge, which kind of was her fault, but he's still like, I mean,
it's just, I hate Clay.
Yeah,
there's very few Survivor players that I hate. He's one of them.
Yeah. So all right, this is episode after we see Brian's like I said, winner edit kind of start to come out. Like that, the confessionals from the last episode. And then this episode, if I didn't know who won, I would have thought he had no chance, because this is where he makes comments about women cooking and cleaning and washing clothes and saying like the men, it should be just how it is in the good old days. Like we'll just sit back and eat while they do all the cooking and the cleaning. And these women don't know he's saying these things, but he's saying them in his confessionals. Like, and it's just,
yeah, there's not very many good people on this season.
It's tough. Like that, the best player by far, which is Brian,
is
such a scumbag. And before we'll get into it more later. I do think Brian is a very strong player. He just like he hides who he truly is, and more power to him. But it's like the truth comes out later, man. Like you could be a villain, like Parvati Shallow or Tony Vlachos be a great player, a great villain without being a complete scumbag. And Brian's like, you know what?
Great A.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, these people, he was so good at manipulating them. They didn't even think he was a villain. They thought he was a great guy. Like,
Mhm.
like they really had no idea. No idea. So this is also the episode where I see that Helen tries to, like, she starts to emerge. I realize she's a very strong player, and she makes comments about how, I guess, Clay is a southern, like, uh maybe racist man or something, and that Ted is just living in his, like, glory days of, like, high school football or something, still living in the past. And she never mentions Brian. Like, shows you, I don't think Brian was on their scumbag radar. Like, he
Well, I
should
think
have been.
they were more talking about like how much do the three guys do around camp, and she's like, none of them really do much, but at least Brian puts in some amount of work. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
whenever they show Clay and Ted at camp, they're just laying around, literally doing nothing.
Oh yeah. And like we said, that's very important in early Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
Very important. So uh Sukjai wins again, and they say originally Ted, Helen, and Jan want to vote for Clay. And it's like, kind of like, I guess Ted was kind of, and Clay were lying. They weren't really actually doing that.
No, they want
And
Gandhi out.
yeah, and Helen realized it, and I don't know if she would have known, like, if they had gone, I think 3-3 would have just been too risky for Helen's game at that point. And she was too smart of a player to know that. So she didn't, like, have any ill will towards Gandia, but she knew
She
to,
wasn't
like,
going to put a game on the line for
gain
Gandhi on day
trust with the
12.
tribe, she had to just vote out Gandia. And this is another thing. Do you remember this tribal where the votes come in and Clay wrote, like, bye
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 bye, Denver Diva.
Denver Diva, and Jeff got so pissed. He's like, enough with the nicknames, like, write a real name next time. Like, I'm like,
Well, because that was the first time he ever had to ask for a vote, ask someone who
like
voted
who
for
it,
him.
who it actually was. Yeah. So yeah, I thought that was funny. He hates this season. Like we said,
Yeah.
it's so clear.
He doesn't hide it either.
All right. So after this, we are even. We got 14. No.
It's 14 people left, but it's 7 on Sukjai, 5 on Chiwigan.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got 7 on 5.
No, 12
7
people
on
left.
5.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Mhm.
7 and 5. And yeah,
With
so
sorry, go ahead.
Clay's pissed that Jan voted for him, even though, I mean, you should realize, like, it's the fucking game. Like, if you don't go home, you got one person on your tribe that voted for you. Like, there's no reason to flip out. You don't see that on Modern Survivor like you did in Old School Survivor, where people would be so pissed about one person voting for him when the game wasn't even really played that strategically. It was all based on, like, just
Who do you
friendship
like?
and
Who does stuff around camp?
Yeah, exactly. Especially for the early boots. All right, so yeah, Sukjai has better spirits now because they're up in numbers. Actually, they've only had to go to tribal one time, and I think this is when the auction happens, right?
Yeah, the first, I think, only pre-merge auction.
So I don't think we actually didn't touch on this in One World. So Redemption Island did not have the auction, but
One World did.
yeah. So you're like me, I know. You love the auction,
I
right?
love it. Yeah.
I love it. I think it should be in every single season. It's a Survivor staple. Like every season, I look forward to the used to look forward to the auction, and the season that didn't have it, I'd be upset. Now I know we're probably never getting it again, and I'm like, just so disappointing. Like,
The one thing I would love to see on an auction in a new season of Survivor is everyone's waiting for like an advantage or something or whatever. They do an auction? There's no advantage, no
yeah. So
nothing,
I
and so
think they
whoever
should just strictly. My thing is like make it strictly food again. You can't have the Kagiyan or
Worlds
Worlds Apart
apart,
auction where they just all the big time play the people that actually were there to really win were
we're all
just
just waiting on the advantage.
holding out for advantage. And I think this would solve things. I've read it maybe on a Survivor Reddit comment, but I really think this is a good idea. Make the very first item an advantage and see whoever bids the first 500 gets it. Whoever gets it after that, the rest of the auction you just bid for food. So like it's out of the way with early. You don't have people holding out for it.
Well,
It's whatever.
I kind of like my idea better because it's like you see all these people who are gonna wait for an advantage or whatever, and that just
And
never
just
shows
not,
up.
yeah, just not have one. Yeah,
And it's
that's
like,
all.
oh well,
That'd be funny. But anyways, getting back to this season, you think it's weird? The only pre-merge auction. Did you like it or?
I didn't like it. No,
So I
because
think
like it looked like regular portions of for like one person. Like it's stupid to share it between like 5 or 7 people.
yeah. So I want to. They got like uh Sukjai got like a cheeseburger with fries that they had to share among 7 people, which is like you each get like a fucking bite. They were like licking all the ketchup up just so they could get something to eat. And then
Yeah,
I think
no.
they got a hot fudge sundae. Like Chewy Gon got nachos and margaritas. Maybe what else did they get? Spaghetti and meatballs, but it looked like it was could have been for one person. Like,
It
yeah,
looked like the food portions were for one person, but they had to share between
yeah,
everybody, which I
for
don't like.
sure. I like this. Like, it should be where it's always at. It should be a final 8,
Nine,
final
8, yeah.
7 to 10, 7 to 9. I would say even challenge. Like, should not be pre-merge.
No, that was
But
awful. But don't forget also before they started the auction,
oh,
Jeff offered the
how did I
mutiny.
forget that? Oh my god! All right, get into it. You can talk about that.
Yes, so before the auction started, Jeff gave each tribe a chance, each player on each tribe a chance to switch tribes if they wanted to, and no
Oh,
one took it. But you get confessionals from people, from Sheehan, from Stephanie on Sukjai, and then from Chewigan, from
Helen,
Helen and
Jan.
Jan,
Yeah.
who both said they
So
had.
honestly, this is like the most interesting thing up to this point of the season for me. Like, if someone had actually switched tribes, that would have been Survivor groundbreaking, like Survivor moment. Instead, we just got a shitty pre-merge auction and nobody switched and nobody even like unless you're like me or you we're doing this podcast. I almost even forgot, like, unless you're like me or you, we're not going to remember that Jeff asked them if they could switch tribes before.
I was surprised they showed it if no one took it.
Yeah, so but it is a good idea, and we literally saw the mutiny like 7, 8 seasons later, whenever it was with
It was 8 seasons later in
Cook
Cook
Island.
Islands.
Yeah, so just kind of broke the ground for that. But I think it would have been really cool to actually see someone switch tribes. Like if Jan, who just was on the wrong side of the vote the last time, said if Jan wasn't, if Jan was in, if Sheehan was in Jan's shoes, I think she would have switched tribes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Sheehan was looking for a reason to switch, but just didn't do it.
She didn't have a, yeah, it would have been bad.
She knew that if they went back to tribal, she probably would have had the numbers. She just didn't like
if
the people
Jan
that were
was
there.
a less loyal and more aggressive player, she would have switched tribes, I think.
100%.
All right. So after the auction, what do we got here? So Rob gets bit by a stingray you remember that?
Yeah, and then he hobbles back up onto the beach, puts his foot up, and it's like all bloody in there. Like, what happened?
You get more of Sheehan after this too, like talking shit about Rob. Like she hates him. It's
Yeah,
so
when
fun.
it was just so typical. Rob would do something on the show, and then you get Sheehan's reaction to it.
Yeah, or Sheehan does something and it gets Rob's reaction.
Rob's reaction.
It's great. That's honestly like maybe my favorite thing about this whole season. Like I love that like back and forth like rivalry pre-merge like, but at this point we're at episode 5 and they should have swapped after this episode or before it, and the season wouldn't have been as shitty. But like this is my other thing. I'll interrupt in the middle of what we're talking about. But, like, why did they not swap after they did it the previous 2 seasons? Like, why did they think it was a good idea to not swap? They had the fake merge in mind, or
Well, I think they had their twist this time wasn't a swap. They offered the mutiny, and I think when they offered the mutiny, they had no plans on swapping. That was going to be
so
their
you think
swap. I think
production?
they expected people to switch tribes.
Yeah. So they just got they didn't hit on casting, and they got people that played soft and were
Wouldn't take the
never
mutiny.
going to switch tribes. So
Mhm.
they decided like we're not
I
even
think that
going to
I,
entertain a swap. Yeah.
I think that was definitely what they did because they had the swap on Africa and Marquesas, and this season at the typical time that you would have seen the swap, they had the mutiny offer. So like they definitely expected people to take the mutiny, and then that was going to be their swap for the season. And then when it didn't happen, they're like, "Oops," because you see the
Yeah.
swap in the next season for the Amazon.
Yeah. All right. So after this, I got Stephanie is starting to on Sukchai. She's really starting to suffer. She doesn't fit in. She's kind of like Tanya was earlier. She's ailing. And I think that like she was someone who casting was probably disappointed by.
Oh yeah, she's supposed to be a tough firefighter, and then there wasn't anything
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. All right. So she seems like a nice person. It's just like she was just really struggling, and it's hard to see.
Well, it's what happens. Some people you expect to do well out there when they get out there, it's just
They
they
can't
can't
handle
adjust.
the conditions. Yeah. All right. So they get after this, they get into the immunity challenge, and it's a very weird challenge. It's simple, but I like it. So they had to go grab a bunch of raw fish and throw them into buckets. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Did you like the challenge?
Yeah.
It's weird, but it's simple. I kind of like it. I think the challenges are one of the better things about this. I think the challenges,
It was a lot of unique challenges that you don't
yeah.
see in current Survivor.
So I like most of the old school seasons. I really generally like the challenges, and this was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely one minor positive, but like for me and you, the challenges aren't the most important thing.
Yeah, I don't watch Survivor for challenges.
Exactly. We'd watch we'd be with
We watch the challenge.
shout out Jonathan Biggs. We'd be watching the challenge with him. I'm gonna tell him about this tomorrow, see what he thinks about that. But all right. So, anyways, all right. After this, Chewy gets their much needed win. They were
Yeah.
down 7-5 in numbers. If they lost this, they'd be fucked. And they're not going to lose a member until the final 5 after this, which is crazy. Sukchai, this is the beginning of the Sukchai demise. And to me here, pretty much the writing is on the wall for Stephanie. Like you know she's going home.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well, because
her
if
and Rob are on the bottom, but it's
they need
clear
Rob for challenges.
exactly like even in modern Survivor, like I think it still would have been Stephanie because you still need those guys there to help you with the challenges. And even if Rob he was dead set. Rob was going to vote Sheehan until she went home. Like
Until one of them was gone, he was
he
going to
was
vote for
not going
her.
to vote for anybody else, and I thought that was so funny too. I think was it this? This was yeah, it was this tribal where Rob's voting confessional. He goes, "Yeah, uh, you get on my nerves, and I don't like you. Nothing personal." Like it's like
So dumb.
very personal, Rob. But okay. He might as well have just, if he really wanted a chance to maybe like not be the next boot, he should have
Could have voted for
just
Stephanie.
voted. Yeah. So that's the thing. I think if this game were a little more advanced, or if Rob had more than half a brain, he would have voted. He would have voted for Stephanie. But he wanted to be in out so bad that he couldn't resist himself. So all right, Stephanie goes here, and then we go to episode 6, and this is where I think this is maybe this is the second most interesting episode to me besides episode
the next
7.
one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you get back at camp, and Rob and Ken are really like going at it, like really bad. Like Rob's accusing Ken of playing both sides. Like Ken basically rightfully says, I told you to vote for Stephanie. You didn't vote for Stephanie. Like, what do you want me to do? He was right.
Of course he was.
Rob is continuing to be a jackass about pretty much everything. But like, this is one of the moments, like you said, you just can't look away. It's like, it's pretty just comical.
Yeah, you have to watch it.
Idiots arguing with each other. Yeah. And then Ken basically tells Rob he saved him. Like they could have threw the votes on Rob, but Ken told them we don't want Rob out. And that's when I guess Rob kind of like starts to feel like a jackass. And then I think people also get pissed a little bit later this episode because they want all those bananas from the reward.
And Rob was starting to eat them all
Rob
before
just starts eating all of them, like for no reason. Like, oh God, this guy's a train wreck. I love him though. I love it. He is, to me, he's one of the all-time pre-merge characters. Like
characters, yes. Players, no.
Bad as this, players, he's awful. But like, as far as pre-merge characters, he's almost as good as it gets. And he got so close to the merge too.
Well, they thought.
Yeah, they thought, but close enough. And I mean, I curse a lot, all this and all that, but I think Rob's up there for most F-bombs in confessionals / at people.
Just
in, like,
in complete.
Like, he has no regard for it. He's just, fuck this, like, fuck that, like, fuck you, like, and everything. Like, he doesn't care.
Yeah, he's got no filter.
Yeah. No filter, and I don't like, so, like, me and you are young. Like, we don't have as much life experience as a lot of people, but like, I think that younger people who do well on this show are like me and you. We're more self-aware. I don't think he's very self-aware.
He had no self-awareness at all.
Self-awareness at all. God, this guy. All right, so Sukjai wins reward, and Rob actually here, I think, is applauded. He did really well in the reward challenge.
He scored all their points except I think the last one.
So it was like they had to catch it was kind of like the Gabon one. They had to catch the balls with
so like this was I think this and maybe one or two other challenges, the only ones that like are still used in modern Survivor. It's they had the slingshot and they launched the balls, and then you have everyone paired up trying to catch it in their nets. And if you catch the ball, you score the point.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the challenge a lot. Like I said, I like a lot of these challenges, but
yeah, but that's definitely one of them that still gets used today. Like that one,
yeah.
I know the Final Five immunity challenge still does.
Yeah. All right, so the immunity challenge for this one was very weird, very simple.
I didn't understand it.
The flags.
Yeah, so it seemed like I guess you needed to be able to take the last flag.
So this is the thing. I don't totally remember how many they started with,
It was
but the
21, I
option
think.
is so yeah, you could take 1, 2, or 3 flags at a time, and you would basically just strategically decide how many you're going to take, so that you got to the point where the end where you were whoever had to go last like was winning or losing. So they had to like base it around that strategically. So very simple challenge, but Chewy Gong wins, and like it's another tribal, just like the Stephanie boot, where I think the writing's on the wall for Rob. You even got like his confessional saying like this was a great, like not even confessionals, his
At camp.
talking to tribe mates at camp saying like this was a great experience, like yada yada yada, like this was awesome.
Yeah, he
And
knew he
then
was done.
yeah, you knew that. And then even at tribal, like he's getting his votes, and they're putting Rob on the parchment, and he's like, it's 2 B's, guys, like all that stuff. Like he knew it was coming, and it was sad, but it's also like it just shows you like how nobody on this season was willing to make moves, like
No.
ever. Like whoever could successfully, like there was a couple maybe blindside, like early blind, maybe the Jed vote was a blindside, and then once the Chewy Gone 5 were left, like the Ted vote and the
Those were
Helen
blind
vote were
sides.
blindsides. But besides that, everything was like nobody was willing to like turn on
Stop it.
anybody or lie to people. Like we'll get in there a couple of episodes later, but that merge or pre 2 episodes later, that last boot before they actually merged, like where Aaron went home, cringed to me. Like they were like crying about voting each other out, and it was like, oh, like should we tell each other, or like
I couldn't fucking deal with that.
it was so dumb. Like you today, it's like play the game, guys. Like it's for $1 million. Like
Yeah, no,
it's
that annoyed me
it's
very
really
much.
annoying. All right, so before we get to that, I mean, we'll get to the famous episode of the season. Maybe the only like episode that's probably like really remembered in Survivor history, which is episode 7, the fake merge episode. What do you think of this?
I loved it. This whole
I
episode was
love it.
great.
I love it. It's very, very interesting, and
Very well
from
done too.
being season 5, like there's no way anybody could have like seen that they weren't actually merged. Like Jeff
because
got them so good.
Because the first 4 seasons, it was always you start with 16 people, and then when you're at 10, you merge into one tribe. And so, of course, this time they were at 10. They had both tribes come together. They had people intermingling with other tribe members. They put them all on the Chewigan beach. And it wasn't until they get to the immunity challenge when Jess tells them, like, oh, yeah, we're ready for the individual. He's like, what do you mean individual immunity? You guys are still 2 tribes.
Yeah.
And just their jaws just drop because they all thought they were merged.
Yeah. So let's go back to the first 3 seasons or 4 seasons before that. So season 4, they merged. Rob got voted out before the jury, but after the merge. So like 10, like with the final 2, not a final 3, 7-person jury, like 10 is
so the way it was
merged, but
done was
not jury.
always, you merge at 10, the first merge boot's off the jury, and then the jury starts with the second merge boot.
So who was the merge boot in Africa? I'm trying to think.
Clarence,
and that, yeah, you're right. And then it was Kelly. She was the first jury member. And then 10 or season 2 was
Varner was the merge boot.
And then season 1 was
Gretchen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, they had the trend of merge before jury, and this just changed everything. So they definitely weren't expecting it.
Oh, not at all. They totally
Yeah,
thought it was a merge.
yeah. And what do you think of these like weird like dynamics where I think it was it Ken and Helen and then Sheehan and Clay,
Sheehan and Clay went to Chewy.
Chewy got on, and then
Ken and Helen went to Sukchai.
went to Sukchai. And this is where Sheehan really like she thinks they're merged, obviously, but like she's still making, in my opinion, kind of questionable like moves. Like
Yeah, I didn't like how she aired everything out to Clay at that time, but like I totally get like if that's how she was really feeling, but like I'm not 100% convinced that she would have been going home if Sukchai lost if she didn't do that. But I could be wrong.
yeah, it's so
I know there's definitely a
definitely
good chance it
what
could have been her, but
it's definitely what got her voted out.
oh,
There was
absolutely
a
got her voted out.
chance, but I mean, this is like this was like the last episode was for Rob. This episode was like the Sheehan episode. It was like you knew basically the whole time that like they were leading her up to be booted, like based on this twist that no one was expecting, and she just gave people too much information.
And it bit her.
Yeah, big time. So when they get back there, Jeff breaks the news that they're not merged. They're just living on the same beach. And after this challenge, like they didn't even go back. Like they didn't even go back to camp. Like we
No, they went
talked
right to
about.
tribal.
Yeah, we talked about how there's like no strategy talk like between the challenge and tribal, but this time they actually like it wasn't just that they like didn't show it; they actually just went straight to tribal. So like I think at that point it was obvious like they're gonna vote they're gonna vote for Shan. Like
Well, she literally just tried flipping on him.
yeah, she threw them all under the bus. Like
Every single one of them.
yeah, and they were recruiting her too. Like it wasn't just her. Like they were pushing for her to come with them hard, but she gave them too much info.
Yeah.
She could have
And
been
you
a little
knew.
more sly about it.
Yeah. But that's Monday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah. All right. So the next episode, they are still not merged, but we have a what is it? 5-4. Yeah.
5 Chewigans, 4 Sukchais.
Yes. So at this point, the Souk guys start to feel in trouble a little bit, even though they're not merged yet. And Penny tries to warm up to the Chewy Gons. And it's sort of interesting to me. I don't think Penny is a great player or anything, but I think she was there to play the game more than a lot of these people.
Yeah, you can't say that all these people were definitely trying to win, but Penny definitely, I think, had her head. She
See,
had her
like,
head enough into the game.
I see these like I've listened to podcasts about it before, and like they say like if this turns differently for Sukjai, that Jake is the one who wins the game.
I think Penny.
I think Penny's the one who wins the game, or Ken, either one of them. I don't think Jake was as strong of a player as either of them.
I
I
think
don't.
Jake was just likable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Ken sort of was too, but I think that Ken was a little bit sharper than Jake.
Yeah.
And I think Penny was more sly than either of them. I think she had more game than both of them.
It was just Aaron had no shot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there was nothing there with her.
yeah, not at all. And Ken, after this, I know, so this one they're all living on the same beach still. He tells Chewy that they voted for Jan because she would have voted them all out, which is true. But I also think Ken also gives these Sukjai people just give Chewy too much information. I think like they like lie more. It's Survivor. Like like these people tell the truth way too much. Like,
Hey, they weren't good at the game.
no, they weren't. And they gave like Brian, that's why Brian was the best one here, because Brian was the one who wasn't going to give you all the information. And these people just, they did.
And he took
Right.
advantage every single way he could.
Yeah. So in this episode, I have written down Brian makes more comments about women washing clothes, and I think he calls Xian like Sue Lee or something like that, some racist Asian name. Like it's just like you see in the confessionals how much of a scumbag this guy is, and
I don't know why they aired this all.
because it was
I get
2002. Yeah,
yeah, and they guess they wanted to show like what a bad guy he was, but like
that's your winner too. Like they, they really like. I think they wanted to basically show that this guy can skate through the game. Like he talked about later, his skate, whoever got the best skating skills, like is gonna win. And I think they wanted to show you like that people can be scumbags and still
put on a
manipulate
winning game.
people and make them believe they're nicer than they actually are and win the game. And he successfully did it. I mean,
Yeah. You gotta give him credit.
yeah. We'll get into my where I rank him among our three winners later, but yeah, Brian played a good game. He's a scumbag. There's no way around it. Very controversial confessionals and comments, but no one on the island saw it apparently
I don't know how.
until final tribal, when we'll get to that later. All right, so after this, I get that Jake is kind of desperate and Ken is desperate. They approach Brian, or Jake mainly approaches Brian, and then approaches Ken and says, I talked to Brian, me, you, and Clay and Brian have a final four. And Ken's like, Jake, like this guy's a used car salesman. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Which was the right read, obviously. But it's like, I think Jake is overrated. Like, I don't think like any super Survivor fan is saying he's a great player, but I think like the things I've seen that say he would have won this season if it worked out for Suchai, I really don't think so. Like I think he had very, very bad reads on a lot of these people.
Yeah, no, Ken definitely had the right read on that one.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so getting in this immunity challenge, you remember?
Yeah, it's like
crazy.
They get them like little bit.
That's got to be one of the toughest immunity challenges they ever have done. Like you're literally breathing, like it's basically holding your breath underwater. Who could do it longer?
Well, like they had that challenge. I know definitely in Palau and Micronesia they did it when you have put you under like the the cell.
The screw. Yeah, that might be. I don't know.
I think that's worse because at least this season they gave you like a bamboo chute to breathe out of, and it would never rise above the chute.
So I don't know. I think they're both tough.
They are.
Yeah, I think the cell one might be worse. But nevertheless, any of the breathing challenges underwater are difficult. And it basically just came down to Brian being.
It was Brian versus Jake, and then
beast. Yeah.
Yeah,
like Brian was never going to lose to anybody there. I don't think Brian's human either. I really don't. I don't think he doesn't have feelings. He acts like a robot. Yeah, I literally do not think he's human. Like this guy is just crazy. All right, so after this, we get the four Suchai who have to go to tribal together, and
their fucking little love fest beforehand that annoyed
it's
every
cringe.
bone in my body.
Oh, it's very cringe, but it's also like they kind of like, if I was old enough at the time of watching this, I would not have known who was going home because they didn't mention anything.
Yeah, it was the one time you definitely like were trying to figure out who was going home.
Yeah,
and like it ended up being Aaron, but
But in the end, it didn't matter because if you're really knew the game, you knew that Chewy Gun wasn't turning on each other, and they were fucked either way. Like it was a
Yeah, it was
matter
just
of ninth, eighth, seventh, or sixth place, basically. Yeah. So Aaron goes home, which is fine with me. She didn't really. She was purpled. Like she didn't really give you much.
she gave you nothing.
Yeah, I don't remember too much about her, even after watching
I
this
don't remember.
fucking.
I just finished watching the season. I don't remember
Me too.
shit about her.
I literally just watched this whole season the past week, and I don't remember her giving me anything memorable at all. Whereas Penny, Jake, and Ken at least gave me something. Huh. All right. So I have my reunion ended. So the Amazon's actually playing in my background right now, which so refreshing. Such a good season compared to this dog shit season, but whatever.
We'll get to the Amazon.
Yeah. Much
Not for a
later.
while.
All right. So the merge episode finally, we got it. So Jake is kissing Chewy Gon's ass at this point. He thinks he's got to stay. Like does whatever he could to try to stay, but they're annoyed. They're not buying it. I don't think at all.
Nothing.
And then I think this is where Brian wins his video from his wife.
Yeah, because they just merge, and then they have the.
And people see, like I think it was Helen mainly who sees like his house and the cars he has and stuff, and is like, does this guy really need the money? Like, so that should have been a red
needing the money was
flag
very
for
big
her.
back then too.
Yeah.
In old school Survivor.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think in new school, people are more inclined, like you said, to just vote for who played the best game,
Mm-hmm. But
unless
definitely
you
back
were
then.
like bitter. But back then, it's like, if this person does not need the money, we don't want to vote for him. Like that happened a lot. And yeah, it was important then, but I mean, they never turned on him. So one of the most shocking things of the season, I think, is that Clay wins the next immunity challenge. Like I never thought
Clay
he'd win
beats
the
Ken
challenge.
in an immunity challenge.
Yeah. Never thought that would happen. And Ken briefly does what he could, I guess, in this 5 fucking minutes we ever get before tribal, try to break this up. And he's unsuccessful, obviously. Like Chewy Gon's gonna stay loyal. And they see him as the biggest threat, so he goes home.
Well, yeah, he just finished second in the challenge. Like he's a bigger physical challenge threat than Jake.
I think even if he didn't, though, he was
going, yeah.
He was the ringleader there. He was the
one with the brain telling Jake, "Don't listen to what Brian's telling you."
And Penny had more game than she let on, but she was more like the younger, innocent, like Southern girl. Like Ken was the target there.
Yeah, leave me alone. Yeah, Ken is a dead man walking.
So maybe in the immunity idol era, they might have voted for someone else because they thought Ken might have had the idol, but like
they could have. I think they vote Penny that night.
Yeah, pre-idol era, it's different.
And because you don't have to worry about anything. It's literally, we're going to vote for this person and they're going home no matter what.
Yeah. It just shows you with a pagonging in the pre-idol era too.
It's so bad.
It's very bad. And it's like, why? Like I said, it's on my screen right now. It's why the Amazon is so fucking good, because there are no idols or anything, but there's fucking Rob Sesternino, who's running wild, who is just flip-flopping everyone back and forth, and there's no predictable boot after the merge, even without the idols and stuff. And I love that shit. And it's just, in this season, it was so predictable, so bad. Like I said, the strongest 3, 4, 6, and 7, I thought were decent episodes.
Well,
Besides
7
that,
blows them all away with the fake marriage episode.
oh yeah, and like I said, even 3, 4, and 6 were decent. Like the opening of the season and then after the merge were just weak. Everything, pretty
Mhm.
much everything. I do think the final tribal is better than the last 2 seasons we watched, but just because it was close to it. But
Yeah, and you had definitely had some jurors who were leaning certain ways, and they kind of weren't going to
yeah,
budge no matter what was said.
wasn't totally predictable. All right, so after Ken goes home, we got what, 5 versus 2. Got 7
Yeah.
people left,
Yes, the 5 Chewigans against Jake and Penny.
and Jake is still like trying to dig his way out of this. Like,
I give Jake a lot of credit for not giving up.
yeah, like I'll at least say Jake and Penny did not give up. They fought hard with no idols, no like alliance that was going to turn on each other. They did what they could, but like they, Jake was right where I think he told Ted that Clay was the one who wanted to vote, told them to vote for Ted, which was true.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
Ted
Ted was
just
pissed
didn't
off
believe
about it.
it. He didn't believe it. Yeah, he just got.
Well, Ted was pissed that he got the votes, and then we got even more upset when that they were trying to lie to him about it, even though they weren't lying to him.
No, yeah.
That just goes to show you how good of a player Ted is.
Jeez, he's awful. He might be worse than Clay, I think, to be honest.
That's close. That's a close one.
Yeah, so I think this is where Brian starts to win a lot of challenges. He didn't win immunity, but he won
the reward challenge and took Clay with him on the reward.
And that's when people started to really, I guess, see that
the 2 of them were a pair.
These 2 were never going to turn on each other. And I think Ted questioned Brian's loyalty at the camp when they were on the reward. And people were like, but Helen was not really buying it. And Helen's a good player, but I think her biggest downfall was that
she put a lot of trust in Brian.
She couldn't see through Brian. And that, to me, like I said, it speaks to Brian as a player. I think he does not get the credit he deserves. He's not a good person. I will continue to beat that drum, but he knows what he's doing out there. And most of these people don't. So
it's both pretty. I was just gonna say it's pretty easy to dominate a season when you're playing with a bunch of idiots.
Well,
just go look at Kim and Boston Rob.
Exactly. There's a lot of parallels in that regard with our 3 worst seasons. Like dominant winner, bad cast. Could these 3 have done it with a competent cast? I don't think so. Maybe Kim.
I'd give Kim a fighting chance.
I'm giving, yeah. So spoiler alert, we'll get into it. My winner rankings of our 3 seasons so far, it's Kim, Rob, and then Brian. I had
the same way.
If Brian,
I might flip flop Brian
and Rob. The only reason I put Rob ahead is because Brian almost lost to Clay.
Yeah, and that's pretty bad. The only way I would flip flop them was basically how you said if Brian had more votes, because like he won by one vote. Like
if he won 6-1, he'd be higher than Rob for me.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And like they say his social game was really good, but like could it have been that good if you almost lost to Clay? Like,
how do you almost lose to Clay?
Yeah. I mean, he did get all the votes from his alliance, so it was just the Souk guys that voted for Clay, but we'll get into that. So now they go back to the immunity challenge, and it's one where they have to answer questions, and there's chops. So
yeah, and they instead of the chops, you snuff a torch.
Yeah. So Penny goes for Jake. She wants to fit in with Chewy Gon and prove she's willing to stick her neck out on line.
I liked her thinking. It didn't
I
work.
really
But
did too. There's no other play here. Like, there's nothing else you could have done. Like, I
hey,
get
look,
your plan
I'll turn
for
my
one.
back on him.
I get your plan to make it one spot further, but it's like when you're down 5-2, what else could you really do?
Mhm. But you say like, oh, to get one spot further. I know in old school Survivor, you couldn't really like, oh, maybe one spot changes everything, but one spot, especially current Survivor, one spot could change a lot. But
Yeah.
then like, who knows if she was like maybe could have won a challenge or two.
If she won immunity, yeah.
You force them to turn on each other early.
Won immunity, then you find a crack. Who knows?
So
All right. So after
I love what she did, but
yeah, she had the right idea. So Helen wins immunity, and Penny pushes hard to get Jake out, but Chewy sees Penny as a bigger threat. But somehow this vote, most of them were falling set in stone. I think Jan voted for Jake voted for Jan, and Clay and Penny voted for Jake, which was interesting. Like, I still am confused as to why Clay voted for Jake. I really don't understand.
I don't get that either.
It makes no sense. Like, and why there wasn't more, like, a little bit more backlash after this. Maybe they didn't know he voted for her, but it's not talked about enough.
Yeah, like this isn't current Survivor where you have to worry about an idol and split the votes. It's more just why.
It's just weird. It just doesn't make sense. Like, Clay was so locked in with Brian and even Jan and even Helen, and he doesn't vote with them. He votes with someone who he's never like voted with, has been with for one tribal council and did not vote with the previous tribal. So,
well,
it's
you
weird.
also have to look at the end. Maybe it was just Jerry Imaginary. He got Penny's vote. Maybe
Yeah,
this had something to do with it.
could be. Maybe Clay's actually a strategic genius. We just had no idea. Yeah.
I needed a good laugh. Thank you.
All right. So next episode is the recap episode, which we're not going to talk about, obviously. But how do you feel
I
about
skipped that?
Yeah, obviously.
I
But
hate recap episodes so
it
much.
was so. I remember just being like middle school, like Survivor was only on once a week. There was no streaming services, and it was like I watched the episode, and then it's like the preview for the next one, and you see it's the recap episode, and you're just like, "Fuck, I gotta wait 2 weeks to watch this shit again." It's like horrible.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I hate it.
I'm
I
sorry,
don't
they
know
don't
how
do it
many
anymore.
people actually watch them either. All right.
The last time they did a recap episode was South Pacific.
I didn't even think it was that. I thought it was Heroes vs. Villains, but
I don't think that they didn't do one for Heroes vs. Villains.
did they or not? No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Yeah. Did they do one for Samoa or Token Teams? I'm trying to think.
I think they did one for both.
They did for both, yeah. They definitely did for Token Teams. I don't know about Samoa, but
I think they
did
did one for Samoa.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. We're getting here pretty close, but so episode 12. We got the loved ones are here,
Mhm.
and they compete in the reward challenge. They have to eat bugs, I think.
Yeah. It's the gross food eating challenge, basically.
So we haven't not discussed it in our other two seasons so far. We will discuss it later, in future episodes when we talk more about gross food eating challenges. But do you like gross food eating challenges?
As a viewer, yeah. As a player,
I think
no.
every classic Survivor fan like me or you loves them. I love it. And I'm going to say, if I was a player, I would like it. Michael, you're season 3 of your org. When I'm playing, you better have a food eating challenge. I'm going to win.
I said that when And I played Super Duper. I had to eat 12 donuts for a challenge. That didn't work out very well.
Yeah, and that's like eating fucking filet mignon compared to what these people are eating in their gross fooding challenges. But
Yeah.
yeah, I like it. I think it's interesting. It's Survivor. It should be a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's yeah, it's fun to watch. So Helen's husband wins, I think, and she goes back to camp with him, I think, and she is showing her flaws. Like, I love Helen, but she's telling her husband, I trust Brian, but I don't trust Clay. And just shows you like these people, they all trust Brian.
Bad reads.
And he's got his game wrapped he's got this game wrapped around his finger, in my opinion. Whether people like it or not, he really does.
And it looks so he makes it look so effortless.
He makes it look so easy. He's the Iceman, Mr. Freeze.
Oh God.
He doesn't like the one thing I will say that's good about Brian's game. Like there's a lot of good things, but the one thing that I think that he has that a lot of other people don't have is that he truly like it's something like in his character where he just doesn't show emotion, and that's good when you're out on the island. Like he's got that great poker face where people don't know what he's thinking, and he's so good at lying to people, and it works out for him.
It almost didn't work out for him.
It almost didn't, but I mean, I also think he kind of just blew it at the final travel. I think he could have won 6. We'll talk about this in a couple, but I think he could have won 6-1 if he played that final travel a little bit better, because he still got the votes from his alliance. He got the Chewy Gun votes.
He got the Chewy Guns and Jake.
Yeah. All right. So to me, this episode though, so they go on. I think Ted wins immunity with his brother. They competed in the challenge.
Yeah. So the way they had just the loved ones doing the reward challenge.
Yeah.
And then when they did the immunity challenge, they let the loved ones come in to compete with the players. They literally they cuffed them together to do this block puzzle that would be a 3x3 cube when it was done, and Ted and his brother won it.
Yeah. But like to me, this is maybe the worst episode of the whole season, because I think like it's 5-1 at this point, and as long as Jake doesn't win immunity, which he didn't, it's like it could not be more obvious who was going home. Like it is just.
It's let's get this episode over with so the Chewy Guns can start going after each other.
Yeah. So I like the saying the writing's on the wall, but like this episode is like the writing could not be more on the wall for Jake. Like it's so bad.
It was in big Sharpie letter. Just Jake, you're going home if you don't win. Yeah. And then he didn't win and he went home.
All right. So let's get to the last couple episodes, which are a little bit more interesting than what we've been talking about the last few episodes. So now it's at day 34, and Chewy Gon has not had to vote out someone from their original tribe since day 12.
Yeah, when they voted Gandhi
22 days. So 3 weeks they do not have to vote somebody out. And I mean, it shows you at first, like early in the season, they looked like they were the misfit tribe, like they were on the bottom, and they turned the whole thing around. I argue they got lucky because
they got very lucky.
No swap, late merge, super lucky.
Well, to be fair, if the merge happened on time, they were still going to get lucky because Sheehan was going to flip to them.
That's true.
And
but I also
they would have picked off all the soup guys then.
Yeah.
Just probably in a different order.
I mean, that's true, but it's just like if I think this with the no swap thing really set this season up to fail.
Yeah. But that's why every season of Survivor has to have a swap.
Yeah. And like I understand the first two not having swap just because the show was so new at the time, but like once that swap happened in Africa, every single fucking season after that should have had a swap. Like there's no reason not to have one.
And I'm telling you why they didn't have it. I'm sure it told you
It's
because
yeah,
it's because of the mutiny. They
it's
expected people to
because of
swap
that.
tribes.
Yeah. But I mean, we talked about with the Redemption Island, like there's later seasons that don't have swaps and it makes them shitty too. Like seasons without swaps are shitty.
I think South Pacific was one of the most recent seasons that I have a swap.
Yeah. So it was Redemption Island, then South Pacific.
Yeah, and then last one before that was Heroes versus Villains.
Yeah.
Didn't have
But
one,
that's different because
that was by design. They didn't want to swap.
fucking great that season is, but whatever. But yeah, so that's one of the few seasons where it worked. Most of the seasons where there's no swap, it's bad. Like no chance to mix the game up. You got people who are together for too long who are not going to turn on each other. Like it's just not going to happen. So, all right, here we have 5 Chewy gone left. And I see some more Brian winner quotes here. This is where he calls himself Mr. Freeze and says like skating skills are the most important at this point. Like he knows if there's 5 people left, like he has to be the one to skate to the ends, like has everyone on his good side, which he already did, but he had to make sure of it. And just I basically, like he calls himself the Ice Man. He's gonna ice the game, and he does it. So Ted ends up winning the car challenge, which
because Brian yells out the right answer, but had it spelt wrong on his board.
yeah.
And so the second he yelled it out, Ted's like, oh, "Okay, cool, thanks for the answer," and he won.
So if Brian wins, the car curse is never a thing, I guess. Because Brian still would have won the game. So it was like at this point, the person who won the car could never win the season. Like it was like every single time. That I still think it's still true, right? The person who won the car has never won.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ted wins and he takes Helen. And at this point, he's trying to get rid of Clay. He says, Clay does not deserve to be here. That's his argument, basically. They would have been smarter. They would have been like, let's try to take out Brian. I know Brian ends up winning immunity, but it's like that should have been their target.
Every single one of them was under Brian's spell.
Yeah, exactly. Like every single one of them, Jan, Clay, Helen, and Ted, I think would have gone to final 2 with Brian if they could have. I really think so. And it didn't even matter because Brian wins every immunity.
Yeah, Brian's immune for the rest of the season
after
this.
Yeah, he wins the last 3 challenges. But I also think Brian realized he was in an alliance with people that he was going to beat in these immunity challenges too. So that was another reason for him to never turn on any of these people. He literally never had to turn on anybody. Like he had the game wrapped up so easily.
He made the game so easy for himself in the later stages.
Yeah. He set himself up so well and still almost did not win, which is like crazy. Insane. But yeah. All right. So Brian wins immunity. And why do you think they take out Ted here? Because I think they should have taken out Helen realistically.
I think they should have taken Helen out too, but
yeah.
I feel like Brian didn't want to make the move on Helen yet.
Yeah. And I think he knows he's probably got a good shot to win every immunity still. And I guess Ted is his biggest immunity threat. That's the reason.
That had to have been what he was thinking. Because
that's what it was.
If he was thinking like, oh, who's my guy, bitch, like strategic or social, it would have been Helen who went home.
Yeah. For sure. So Ted goes home, and now we have our finale, our final 4, which is Brian, Clay, Jan, and Helen. So what do you think of this next vote out? This is where we see some real like finally like emotion. Like Helen feels really, really burned by Brian.
Yeah, and she doesn't hold it back either of how
And
upset she is about
she's burned by
Brian
Clay.
turning on
She
her.
feels burned by Clay too, though.
Yeah, but she definitely felt the most burned by Brian.
For sure. But I think that she still ends up voting for Brian. So I think that like she was also disappointed in Clay because they said, let's just make this an easy vote on Jan, where Clay and Brian were lying to her the whole time. And it was the right move for Clay and Brian. I mean, Helen wins if she's next to, even if she's next to Brian at the end. You think she
If
wins?
Helen gets to the end, she wins.
Absolutely. And Helen had her head in the game the whole time. She's a smart, savvy player. Her
The only thing she didn't know was Brian.
That Brian had his game wrapped around the finger. He had everyone wrapped around his finger, basically. And she didn't realize that. So she goes home and feels very, very burned. Very burned. And then there's the final three. So at this point, you're almost like, I mean, I knew what happened years later when I rewatched it and when I rewatched it this week, but like I feel like as a viewer in 2002, if you're watching this final immunity challenge, there's like a 90% chance that Brian's gonna beat an old short man and an old woman.
Older.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, and that challenge too. I love that final immunity challenge. It's crazy.
It's so good.
It's hard too. Like you gotta go in that stance and lift
and keep these coins between your
fingers. And I think the title of the episode's even like
slip through your fingers.
Don't let the money slip between your fingers or something. It was like that. It was also, I think, really cool how they did this at Tribal. Like the challenges at the Tribal Council, and that's the one thing of this. One of the only things of the season I like is that it's like there's some nostalgia. There's some like real old school Survivor feeling to it. Like the Tribal Council setting is electric. Like
it's such a nice. I love the whole Tribal Council setup.
Yeah. The one thing that's weird, I think, is that Jeff is like so close to them. Like it's like now he's like 15 to 20 feet back. Here feels like he's like basically right on top of the castaways when they're at Tribal. Like, but yeah, so great challenge. But you knew Brian was going to win. And was there any doubt that he was going to take?
No, I didn't see any. And I think it was clear that him and Clay were tight from the get-go, and he was going to take the risk and go with Clay.
So revisionist history, Brian takes Jan. What do you think happens? Close?
I think he wins. I think maybe 5-2.
So I'm thinking.
I don't know how also. Those.
I'm thinking same vote.
You think the three people voted for Clay will just vote for Jan?
Yes, that's what I think.
That's fair.
But I also think that Brian did think that he had a better chance of beating Clay, even though he probably would have beaten Jan also. I think it was more of like he knew he played the best game. It was just like, I think he thought Jan was more likable than Clay, but I think he thought he had a better chance of beating Clay.
Yeah, well, I mean, he won, so I guess he made the right decision. But
yeah, it was close, like closer than it should have been, if you ask me. But
hands down.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to Final Tribal. This is pretty interesting, actually. So I actually think they both had god awful speeches. Like maybe it's just old school Survivor, but like Clay basically says he came to play hard and blindside people, and it's like, dude, you didn't do fucking anything. Like Like, what did you do, man? Like,
He rode Brian's
besides
coattails.
hide in Brian's back pocket. And then Brian doesn't even really make a good speech. He kind of like talks about like what he did for his tribe and stuff instead of like owning his
Yeah, he didn't
gameplay.
own anything in his
He
speech.
didn't own fucking shit, which is like maybe it's season 5, like being old, but it's like when you're playing today, even if you played a very like scummy game like Brian did, like Russell did later on, you own your game, you own your mistakes, you own when you burn people. Like Brian did not really like, he kind of beat around the bush, like, and it almost fucking cost him.
Well, it's even like when you're playing like on these online org games, like you have to own your game if you get to the finals.
Yeah,
Like you're going to lose if you don't own what you did. If you're
yeah,
still trying to lie about it.
yeah. It's really dumb. So, all right, the first jury speech comes from Erin, who's the first jury member, and I think she asked why they shouldn't vote for the other person.
Yeah.
And Brian says that he was more of a doer, where Clay was just a thinker, which is kind of like it's true, but like he could have like described it a little bit better. And Clay says Brian thought he was the leader, but he really wasn't, which I also think is a shitty answer because I think Brian clearly was the
Was the
leader.
leader.
Yeah. And somehow he still gets Aaron's vote after this, which is like I don't really get like what did Aaron have towards what did she have what ill will
What
towards
happened in those 6 days when
yeah
they were living on the
what
same
ill will
beach?
did she have towards against Brian that she didn't have towards Clay? I don't get that vote at all. I kind of get why. All right, so let's get to the next one. So Ken says he thinks Brian lied about the Ted vote, and I like later like read about this more often, and apparently like Ken thought that Brian was a racist, and he basically tried to get him to like say something about it without actually like asking him about it, and Brian didn't really give him what he wanted to hear, so he didn't like that at all. But like he never really like fully like said like were you racist towards anyone on the cast or anything. He didn't really say that, but it
He was
was
trying
still
to get a point across.
yeah, exactly. And then Ken really still seemed bitter towards Clay. Like he didn't think Clay played well either. But like his vote was totally anti Brian and not like a like I said, I don't think any of these Clay votes were because they actually like liked
They were
Clay.
more against Brian.
Yeah, totally. So Penny is the next one, the last person to vote for Clay. And she pulls a Haley from your final tribal council in Super Duper, where she asks personal questions like, "Where am I from? Like, how many kids do I have? Like, yada yada yada." And literally, like, I don't. Brian could not tell her at all. Like, he said like somewhere in Texas, which was not the right town, and she was mad. And then asked like, I think uh am I the youngest? And Brian's like, yeah, like you're the youngest. And she's like, no, I'm actually the oldest. Like it was like like sibling wise. Like she's like, do you have any you got older do you have any older siblings? Do you think I have any older siblings? And Brian goes like, yeah, like you definitely do. And then like you said, she goes, no, I only have younger siblings. And I guess Brian just answers the questions worse than Clay because I think Clay said something about her being like a Texas Tech like football fan or something. And I guess she really liked that because I guess Clay got to know her a little bit better. So Penny is the one vote for Clay that I actually like could kind of see why she voted for him based on her questions. I really don't understand why Ken or Aaron voted for Clay based on the questions they asked.
Unless they voted against Brian.
Yeah, well, that's what it was, but I still don't like see why you would reward Clay for that, who, in my opinion, is like equally basically as much of a piece of shit. And
I think Clay might be a little more of a piece of shit.
Who, Clay or Brian?
Clay.
More of a piece of shit?
I think smidge, not much.
Yeah, it's close, but like in terms of like who actually played the game, it's clear they're both not good people. But it's like,
yeah, but Brian actually played the game well.
Yeah, exactly.
Clay did not.
Exactly.
But also, I have to touch on this.
All right, go ahead.
Jurors, when they're asking their questions, do not make it about yourself.
I hate that.
Annoys
I hate it.
the shit out of me.
Yeah. So I have in like orgs and stuff, I've never done that, but like in like Broski season 2, I knew who I was voting for going in. So at the end, I just had to ask Vreeland like what he would have done if I was still in the game, and he gave me an honest answer, so it happened. But like, I'm not gonna make the whole. If you make the whole question and your vote based off of yourself, it's just like that's selfish. Like, you're not the only one playing. You're on the jury. Like, make it about these two people in the end. Do not revolve your vote and your question around yourself. I've seen a lot of people do it, and
it happened to me when I was at Final Tribal.
I don't like it at all. It sucks. Like, it's not a fair thing to ask.
No, and especially if it's done because you want to give your vote to someone and you're trying to give them a reason to do it.
Yeah, I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
Rant over. Move on.
Yeah. All right. So Jake was kind of bitter too, and he left his vote pretty clear, like that it's like up for grabs. Whoever wants my vote, answer my question best, and you get it. And Clay botched it here. He basically called Jake out for playing both sides, whereas Brian did something differently and he buttered up to Jake, and Jake's just basically said like, that's all I have to hear. Like, that's enough.
Yeah, and Brian played that one well.
Yeah, he did. So like like you said, some of these jurors, like Clay played it horribly with some of them, and Brian played it horribly with some of them. Some of them, they answer the questions horribly for some of these people, like very badly.
I don't get why.
Yeah,
just answer the questions.
Yeah, and like Brian like literally like almost blew it for himself at this final tribal. Like I said,
he tried.
He had a bad final tribal. For as good of a game as he played, he had a very bad final tribal. All right, so who was next? I think it was it Ted or Jan?
I was Ted next.
So yeah, Ted calls out Brian for being a typical used car salesman. Like, he's the first one to really say it. He's like they said, I think Ken said it in confessional before, but he basically said like, yeah, like, you played this game like a used car salesman and you are one, yada, yada, yada. And then another ugly scene comes in where I think he basically straight up asked Clay if he was a racist. Like, and Clay didn't know how to answer it, but he said he didn't mean anything racist. I don't think he really did, but
it's
hard to say. The edit.
This is just me. This is just me. If you get asked that question and your answer is not a firm no, then you're leaving it totally up for interpretation. Sorry.
Yeah. And you're probably racist if you're saying that yourself.
If your answer is not a firm no, it's a yes, and you're trying to make yourself sound better.
Yeah. Yeah. So just continues with ugliness of this season. There's some, like you said, the Ken and Ted final tribal questions are pretty ugly. And then we get into Helen, who
No, Jan goes for Helen.
Jan goes
They made
before
Helen go last.
Jan, what'd she say? I don't know.
There wasn't much there. It was mostly just they let her go and then they let Helen go last.
It was pretty basic questions. I think Jan asked if there was like a pecking order or something like that. And I think Brian gave her what she wanted to hear, and she ends up voting for Brian. So, but the Helen is the real interesting jury speech here. So you want to get in more into that?
Yeah, you can go. You can talk about it first.
So yeah, I think like they both played her so bad, but it clearly shows that she basically felt way more burned by Brian, but she wanted Clay to give her something more, to the point where she could give Clay her vote, and Clay didn't give her that.
Yeah. One thing I do have to say is like, when has Jeff ever had to butt in during someone at Final Tribal? Because Helen, whenever Brian was trying to answer, Helen kept trying to cut him off and whatever, and Jeff had to finally be like, Helen, relax, let Brian answer the question.
Yeah. She was fired up. Like, she was not happy at all.
And she even said, like, when her final words she was leaving, she's like, she felt most burned by Brian because she asked Brian right before Tribal, am I good? And he was like, yeah, you are. And then obviously when she got voted out, that's when she was more pissed at Brian.
Yeah. So ends up in a 4-3 vote. What do you think? So what do you think Brian should have won by? Because I know you don't think they should have won.
6-1, 7
6-1.
nothing.
Yeah.
I say I'll go 6-1.
Okay. I'll say that's fair too. I think that Penny was the one who deserved Clay's vote based on the questions and stuff. But
I think Ken and Aaron should have just voted for Brian.
It shouldn't have been that close. And the fact that, like, all right, Brian's a scumbag. We've been over that. But he is definitely not a lower tier winner. He is, in my opinion, above average winner. I'm knocking him down on his dominant game a little bit because he played with idiots, like I said.
Yeah, I see people say like, "Oh, he's one of the best winners ever." I didn't see it. Like, I see he's good, but I don't see this dominant Kim Spradlin-esque gameplay that ever people think he has.
Yeah. So I agree. I'll put him on our season so far. He's number 3. But if he had gotten 6 or 7 votes, I put him ahead of Boston Rob. But I also think Boston Rob's RI win is overrated. So, like we've talked about, so I think that Brian is an above average winner, but he loses points for how shitty of a season it is, and the fact that he literally, we got to talk about, like, he almost lost to one of the bigger final 2 goats in the history of the show. Like, Clay is a goat, and he got 3 votes. Like, if Clay wins this season, where would he rank among the winners? Like, of all the winners? Dead last. He's right there for me.
He's either last or he's second last to Chris Underwood.
Yeah, just because he got voted out. But I think, like, even Fabio and Bob and Amber.
Fabio, Bob, Amber are better.
And Ben and Natalie. Even Natalie White might be better, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I have to agree with all that.
I think they're all better than him. He would have been maybe the worst winner besides Chris Underwood. And it's not because Chris Underwood has no game. It's because of what happened.
He was voted out and came back in.
Yeah. So overall, where are you going to put this? Are you going to re-rank it? You going to put it last or second to last? Or
I might put it below One World.
So it's below One World, but ahead of Redemption Islands?
Yes.
All right. I'm going bold. I'm putting it below both.
Oh.
I think it's the worst season I've seen so far on the rewatch. I liked some episodes, but it was just, like, I guess the old school nostalgia had me rank it a little bit higher than both, but I think there's less gameplay going on. It's just like I think I'm going to be lower on Africa and Australian Outback and Borneo when we get there because of like the lack of gameplay in the early seasons, but obviously it's not going to be as low as like some of these bad seasons, but I think out of the very early seasons, this is the worst one. And that along with the lack of gameplay, like compared to like even season 22 and season 24, I think it ranks last for me. I think there's just not much going on strategically. And the fact that like there is literally in the pre-merge 2 minutes before tribal council after the immunity challenge is like just so like shitty to me, like especially in a season that's so predictable. I think it's the worst season that I've seen out of these three.
Yeah, you can definitely make that argument, and I'm not going to argue against you. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, some about Redemption Island just totally bothers the shit out of me, and I just
I
think
don't
it's
like it at
so
all.
bad.
I don't like it either, but like I don't know. At least we see a little bit more modern. Maybe it's the see like some of the early seasons without the idols I like, but it's like some of these bad seasons, if there were some idols in play, I feel like the game could have changed a lot. And it's like if if there were idols in Thailand and Sukjai got an idol or two and changed the game, the season's maybe not as shitty, but it's like it is. And there's just like it was a late merge. The fake merge was cool, but it's like you merge at 8 people when it's 5-3 and there's 5 are never turning on each other. There's 3 vote outs were so predictable. It's not even funny. Like at least in One World and Redemption Island, if you were watching it live, you knew an idol could come out or something. Like someone could find an idol, even though
But you thought
Kim and
Rob both had the idols,
they had
and
the
they never
idols.
rehid them.
Yeah, but it's like still, it's like or at least you think maybe in 22 or 24 at that point on in Survivor that people might turn on their alliance. And this season, you knew that was not going to happen. So yeah, this is last for me so far. Dead last. It's bad.
It's very bad.
But I will say I put a lot of effort into this rewatch. Like I grinded like 2 days in a row. I watched like 6 episodes each day, and it was tough.
It's really hard to get through.
Yeah. So I think our next episode is gonna be. This is where it's gonna start getting a lot better. Like after
I wouldn't say a lot better, but it gets better.
Yeah, I think after these 3 to 5 bottom seasons, we really see an improvement. But I think these are, in my opinion, clearly the bottom 3 seasons. Maybe I don't remember like hating as much of the ones I have ranked a little bit higher as much as I did. So I'll have to see on a rewatch, but it's like I can't see any season I watch after this being worse than these 3.
Yeah, no, it's hard. You can't. It's really bad when you watch Bad Survivor. You can see, oh my god, like you said, when Thailand's over, and like if you're watching just on a loop, the next one is gonna be the Amazon, and you see just the complete contrast of a horrible season and a great season.
Even Marquesas too. Like
Marquesas is pretty good.
I love Marquesas. Like it's not one of my highest.
When you go from that to this dog shit
to Amazon and then to Pearl Islands, even like God, like how did they in this so pre All Stars like first 7 seasons, 6 of the 7 of them they hit home runs on the cap. And then this
but they couldn't have whiffed more on this one.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I really don't. But yeah, it's pretty clear Jeff hates the season too. Like hates it. And
he hates the people that are there.
Yeah. And you got to think too, this season was still when we were getting like 20 million viewers an episode. It was like Survivor was really, really popular. And if we hadn't, I think the Amazon and Pearl Islands almost kind of like helped save the show in the right direction, because I think that after this season, it was getting to the point where it was getting stale, and we needed someone like Rob Cesternino to come in on the Amazon and just be willing to
Mix it
shake up
up.
the game every single week, like where nobody up to that point was willing to do that. But it was like, yeah, if we had another bad season like this after that, we might not be where we are today with Survivor. Like, because this got bad reception from the start, I think. Like,
Oh yeah, no, it was bad from the get go.
yeah, nobody was ever saying like this was a decent season by any means. Like, and like you said, we've seen only one player return from the season.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think of Sheehan in All Stars? Like, do you think she was worthy of a return?
Well, I know
Maybe not for that season, but
they brought back someone from every season, so they needed a representative from Thailand, and I guess they either Brian wasn't available or they didn't want Brian back. So,
oh, I think they might have asked Helen too.
oh, did they? I don't remember that. I
So
just know.
I recently, when I like a couple months ago when they did this on RHAP, Rob said that Helen, I guess I don't think she was asked actually, but he said she should have been asked, and then he said Ken was an alternate apparently for All Stars.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what he said.
yeah. I guess they didn't want any like Brian back. They didn't want anyone who could have caused problems. They didn't want back.
Yeah, I don't
So
know if
like,
they ever considered bringing Brian back or not. I'm not totally sure, but
but like, I don't mind bringing Shan back. Like, I think she was definitely like the big, besides probably Rob, the biggest personality on that Sukjai tribe.
yeah,
She was going, if it wasn't for that fake merge, she was going to shake up the game.
yeah.
It's just the fake merge
She
screwed
was
her.
one of the few people they like could have brought back that made sense. So I get it. I totally get it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that no, like there's not one other person on this season that like will ever be back on the show. Like,
Yeah, never.
or even after All Stars, like I don't think even in 2006, I don't think you ever thought someone from Thailand was coming back. Like heroes versus villains, like fans versus favorites, like they weren't begging for someone from Thailand to come back.
No, I thought the last opportunity someone would have to be seen from Thailand was when they did Winners at War. Brian was taking the ass back, and he didn't.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen either.
And yeah, so that's when Thailand was officially just done.
Yeah,
They're trying to forget about this season.
I think once Brian shot a puppy with an arrow, that
Yeah, he was done.
his chances were eliminated. Maybe even before that, because I don't think they knew he was a softcore porn star before before that point either. But I think it was found out like not long after the show. So like I think like they've really missed on the cast, and they also like really missed in the fact that they really truly got a scumbag winner from this season, and yeah, just didn't work out. It was a flop.
Yep. But like you said, when you compare it's like the casts and everything for the seasons that it's with, from like Borneo to All Stars, like you're gonna have a bad season eventually, and this just happened to be the one.
Yeah, terrible.
It was just on a different level of bad than some of these other seasons are.
Yeah, and there's just like, so I get the early seasons, like I said, there's the strategy isn't the same. Like the reason for voting people out is different. But in this season, it seemed to be even more like just maybe with it, just because the characters were so bad, it was like, it just seemed to not work at all. Like, it was hard to get through on the rewatch, like I said.
It was painful.
Like, I would say this and what Redemption Island were sort of close. I think looking like One World was originally my worst season. I think One World was much better than both of these seasons on a rewatch. Like I significantly better.
Well, the thing with One World to me is like you knew the guys were getting picked off. You just didn't know which one was going every week.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't as predictable. This season and Redemption Island, you literally knew exactly who was going home pretty much every time.
Yeah.
And you had like, I mean, with Kim, you at least had like Chelsea and Sabrina who were playing like decent games there. Whereas with
Philip and Natalie, there's
Philip and
nothing.
Natalie, and then Clay with Brian, it was like,
Ugh.
like I guess if Helen got there, it would have been different. But yeah, so unlikable.
So bad.
But good on Rob and Brian for knowing exactly who they
Know
need
exactly who to take with them to
Yeah,
get their win.
because you might look back on it and say Brian definitely doesn't beat Helen, but like he beats Jan, like we said. Still,
Yeah, he beats Jan. He loses to Helen.
he beats Ted.
Yeah, he beats Ted.
Yeah. So he just knew he couldn't go with Helen, and Brian was smart enough to know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said, I think he probably should have cut Helen before he cut Ted, but
Yeah.
I think he just didn't want to do it at that point.
Yeah. It is what it is.
It worked out for him.
So it's getting late here, so we'll move past Survivor talk about some other stuff for a little bit, maybe like 10 minutes, just because it's so late.
Yeah, it's like 3 a.m.
Yeah. All right, so 7 in a row. New York Knicks.
The New York Knicks are back.
The best show in town.
At all costs was the Yankees.
Yeah. And the Mets. We'll see how we go later. 7-5, but we can't hit for shit right now.
At least you're not 6-10.
Yeah. It's early though. I wouldn't panic yet. Like we've been saying that. I wouldn't panic.
Oh, God.
Not at all, but
it just sucks. The team looks so lifeless. Like there's nothing there.
see, that's how I feel with the Mets offense too, but our pitching has been so fucking good that it does not really matter.
And our pitching sucks. Outside of Garrett Cole, our pitching is not very good.
Yeah, the Yankees starting pitching, yeah.
Even though Tyon pitched pretty well tonight.
Yeah, so we had Taiwan Walker pitch tonight, and he was wild. Like he walked like 5 or 6 guys, and walked in a run, got taken out 3 2/3 innings. Like he had a bad start, but this was our 12th game of the year. We've had 2 bad starts out of 12 games, so pitching has been more than solid. Bullpen's even been okay since the very beginning, but their offense has just not been there. And playing baseball in the Northeast in April, it's cold. It's not super friendly on the offense, but I mean, I'd still like to see some better numbers. Like bats will come around for the Yankees and the Mets, I think, but the real show
you did play 3 games in Colorado, and that didn't seem to help your offense either.
Yeah, they didn't score shit, and it was cold. Like usually you go there when you go there when your offense is struggling and you expect to like score a bunch of runs because like the elevation, but it was like,
I mean, you won 2 out of 3, but
yeah.
Just think of Jacob deGrom being 1 bounce away from being 0-2 with a .45 ERA.
Oh God, so bad. He was so good again on Saturday too. Mm-hmm. He had 9 straight strikeouts. He was literally 1 strikeout off of tying the all-time record, which is also held by a Met, Tom Seaver.
Yeah.
So it's like a 50-year-old record at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an understatement to say that Jacob deGrom's pretty good.
Yeah. Very much an understatement. Every time he pitches, it's to me,
it's
if you like
baseball,
TV. Yeah.
I don't watch much Mets when if deGrom's pitching on a day where there's no Yankees, no Knicks, I watch.
Oh yeah. And literally his fastball, it's only getting better. Like I said, like it's crazy. His velocity increase every year.
Yeah, he's getting his fastball where we're usually seeing Syndergaard's.
Yeah, and he's got more like Syndergaard's more of a straight fastball. He's got that tailing movement where it's just if he's got it located, it's just unhittable.
Yeah.
Totally unhittable. But anyways, like Mets, the Yankees will be fine. They'll be all right, I think. But the real surprise is our mutual team, which is the Knicks. 7 in a row now. How are you feeling about that?
I feel great.
Yeah,
It's nice actually seeing the Knicks be pretty good.
So yeah, I'm not punching our tickets to win any playoff series or anything, but
Oh, I'm punching my ticket to the playoffs though.
for sure we're making the playoffs. But I'm saying like I think we can give any team in the East a run for their money in a 7-game series. I'm not saying they beat Brooklyn or beat
I want Brooklyn. I want Brooklyn
Boston
in the
or
playoffs at
beat
some point.
Sixers. I want the Sixers, to be honest.
I want Brooklyn.
I think we got a better chance to upset the Sixers.
I want to play Brooklyn.
How many games do you think?
I think we could go 6 with Brooklyn.
I think so too. At the max, though.
We're gonna lose to them. They're gonna earn it though.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think you said that last week. But
the Nets think they could just go out, walk onto the court, and beat whoever they want.
yeah. I also I hate Philly so much.
Oh, so do I.
I would love to play them.
No team bothers me more in the NBA than the Nets.
Yeah. I mean, just because like they're so like the thing is, if you're from New York or your family's from New York, if you're a New York sports fan, like everyone's always if you're Mets, Jets, Yankees, Knicks. I mean Yankees, Giants. The mutual thing people come together
Knicks fans
is the Knicks, and recently we got all these bandwagon fucking Nets fans, and they all.
I wonder when they started coming along.
Exactly. It's like they haven't been fans for long. Like it's a joke.
Probably when July 2019 they probably all became Net fans.
Yeah. Once Katie didn't go to the Knicks. Still, whatever. We don't even need him. We got Julius.
He's too busy being hurt.
Yeah, Julius Randle's been the most productive player in New York City this year. Who would have thought it?
I wanted him off the team. You know how much I hated Julius Randle before this season.
Dude, me too, man. He hurt the team last year. It's night and day. It's crazy.
And it just shows like if you put even at the pro level, if you put the work in, you can change your game.
Yeah, well,
like the amount of how he changed his game going from year 1 with the Knicks to year 2, with the change of coaching staffs, with the change of whatever, and he's so much better. Like his numbers, like yes, some of his numbers are like slightly better, but it's like of how much he's changed his game to like now he instead of actively helping them lose games, he's going to lead them to the playoffs.
Yeah, his efficiency is crazy good too. Like
he's shooting 40% from 3.
Yeah. Like, and
when he shot 22, I think it was 27% last season.
I was going to say, and he's below that for his career too. Like when he came into the league, he literally couldn't even make a 3-pointer. Like,
yeah, he didn't start adding the 3 to his game until he got to New Orleans.
Yeah. And then, like you said, even then in last year, he was capable of hitting threes, but he wasn't a 40% 3-point shooter like he is now.
And he's taking way more than he used to when he was shooting the 20-something percent.
The craziest thing about him too is that he's also like getting like 5-6 assists a game on average too. It's like he's a playmaker.
He leads all 3 categories. He leads the team in.
Yeah, he's literally like the LeBron James of this team this year. It's like it's crazy. I can't remember the last time or ever if a Nick has led the team in all 3 categories. I don't think it's happened.
I don't think it's happened in a while.
I don't think it's ever happened because whenever we've had like great teams, there was like with Melo wasn't getting those assists or rebounds. Like Ewing wasn't getting those assists. Like in the late 60s, early 70s, like they were great all around. There wasn't one guy who was leading the team in every category. He would be the first ever, I think. I'm almost
I'm sure
positive.
if you look it up, there's probably something you could find.
He
Yeah.
definitely is though.
And then you like for most teams you have like a Batman and a Robin for like all like a bunch of the Knicks have that. It's Julius Randle and it's RJ Barrett.
Yeah,
Hold on.
and
I want all
Barrett
the people
too.
I want all the people who said that RJ Barrett was a bust.
Tyler Hero is better, right? I
Fucking
heard last
clowns.
year that Tyler Hero should have been number 3 pick in the draft, and RJ Barrett should have been like closer to like 10th. Like, give the kid a chance. He's
Whoever
20.
told you that's a clown.
Yeah, and it's just God, like just because we didn't get Zion or John Morant, people
Yeah,
were
no.
so upset.
RJ Barrett was going to get killed when he got here just because he wasn't Zion, and that's who
Yeah,
the prize was that we were supposed to be going for. But
but
like
that was
this,
a 1, 2, 3 draft where the top 3 picks, if you got a top 3 pick, you were getting
you were
a
getting a good
potential
player.
superstar. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think Barrett has that potential still. Like,
He's going to be an all-star at some point in his career.
look at his outside shooting too. Like last
How
year,
much better he got?
yeah,
Not just from last year, this year. Like I think it was like
beginning of the year, yeah,
January. He was shooting. He missed like 21 straight threes.
he was
It was
struggling.
in like low 20s. I think his 3-point percentage now is 38%,
Yeah,
which from how low it was, that's pretty damn good.
yeah, yeah. He was struggling bad, but
Even
I
tonight,
mean,
he just tonight, like his scoring is so much better now too. He had 18 points in the third quarter alone tonight.
yeah, and I mean, quickly super inconsistent, but he had his
He went
shine
off tonight.
moment in the first half, especially. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love quickly too. I mean, I just
He's so good.
yeah, and Derrick Rose, can't say enough about him either. Huge spark plug. Like,
Trading for him helped start this.
oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, you can be getting 35 minutes from Alfred Payton every night.
God, I wish he was out of the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, he gives him okay minutes, I guess, but you don't, when you have Quickly and Rose, you don't totally need him as much. But I mean, like, we still, besides him, there's no real true point guard on the roster. So
You got a point.
it's tough, but it's also like we get contributions from guys who I was not expecting. Like Nerlens Noel has been awesome. Like
Reggie Bullock.
Reggie Bullock is lights out. Like he's had some great shooting nights. Alec Burks, some great games. Like Taj Gibson gives him good minutes when he has to.
Taj
Like,
Gibson, who wasn't even on this team when the season started.
exactly. And the craziest one to me is Noel though. I like because Robinson going into this year, I was like, all right, Robinson's about to have a breakout year. I love Robinson. I love his defensive game. Obviously, he just has to learn to stop fouling, and his offensive game is going to develop. But it did not happen, and
Broke his
he
wrist
got
and then he
hurt
broke his foot.
twice this year. It's 2 serious injuries, and Noel has stepped in perfectly, and he
He's
doesn't
been
even
great.
need to score, but his defense has been incredible.
I think he's 4th in the league in blocks.
Yeah, he's averaging over 2
that's
blocks a game.
And that's with him coming off the bench for most of the season.
Yeah, he's been great, and like you can't say enough about Thibodeau. Like I saw the same thing with
He should be the coach of the year.
yeah, like
It's gonna be him or the Monty Williams, the coach of the Suns.
yeah,
Just
like
because
I know
of
you're
how
not as much of a hockey guy, but like I'm an Islanders fan too. So it's like the Islanders got Barry Trotz from the Capitals after they won the Stanley Cup
completely turns it around.
and completely changed the team. It's the same thing with Thibodeau. Like coaching matters. Like it really does. Like, and I don't know about you. Were you skeptical at the Thibodeau hire at first?
No, I liked it. I wanted.
Okay.
So to me, like I thought they were going 2 ways. It was either they're going to go Thibodeau, and they were going to try and make something work with this roster and like try to use these veterans to try to get to the playoffs and help them grow with the young kids, or they were going to go with Kenny Atkinson and just fully focus on the youth, and every veteran they have is going to be gone.
See, I would have preferred Kenny at the time, but I am glad to be wrong. I wasn't like I didn't hate the Thibodeau hire, but I wasn't like I was skeptical about it because in Minnesota, he had his players clash with him the last time, and he's kind of an old school like style. Like it's just like I didn't think it could totally like work for a rebuilding team, but it's also like he got people to buy in, and literally, what are the Knicks like first or second in the league at defensive points per game?
I thought they were
Literally,
first.
I think we're first. Yeah, I think they're the best defensive team in the whole league like right now.
They've been
So
the best defensive team like all year, like points allowed per
oh
game.
yeah,
Our
I think
issues we don't score enough.
yeah, that's the thing. We need like this year's fine. Like it's way better than anything we expected, but to move forward with this team, I think the Knicks just need one more like a guard that can
Need a
just
point
fill
guard.
up the basket. Yeah. I'm calling it. Donovan Mitchell is coming to. I know he's not a point guard, but he's coming to the Knicks in 2 years. I'm calling it.
God.
Calling it. Stand by it.
I'd love to trade for like a real, for like a star point guard. I don't know what one's out there, but
I'd rather Damian Lillard.
yeah, but you're going to be giving up RJ Barrett or Julius Randle for that one.
Yeah. So if they could get him without giving up RJ Barrett or Julius Randle, yeah, but I don't think
in a
that's
heartbeat.
happening.
But they'd probably take the rest of your team from you.
Yeah, and like 6 years worth of first round picks. Probably. But they'll get another piece, I think. And I mean, this year we're gonna make the playoffs. So even if we lose first round, I'm content with it.
I remember before the season started, I'm like, can we just fight for the playing tournament? And like now, I'm like, if we have to play in that playing tournament, I'm gonna be a little upset because I think we can avoid it altogether.
I wasn't even saying that. I was like, can I watch some watchable Knicks basketball for once? That was my goal. It wasn't even.
Well, I mean, to be
high.
fair, for the play-in tournament, you had to be a top 10 seed. Like, come on, can we at least be top 10?
Yeah.
Something like that. And we're sitting here tied for 5th right now in the whole Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
And if we beat Atlanta tomorrow, we jump to 4.
4th, yeah. So we're not going above 4th, but if the Knicks could get 4th in this conference,
that'd be insane.
Insane. Like,
that means you're better than like Boston, Miami,
yeah,
Atlanta.
Like Boston, who's been competing for the conference every year.
They went to the Eastern Conference Finals,
and then
Miami, 3 of the last 4
who
years.
Went to the finals last year. Like, yeah, it would just be crazy.
I thought Tyler Hero was a god, though.
Yeah, better than RJ Barrett, apparently. All right. Well, it's getting late. Ready to wrap it up?
Yeah.
All right. So we will have our next episode recorded next Tuesday night. This episode will be posted tomorrow, and we are really looking forward to watching our next season. It's going to be better than Thailand's. I don't think we ever said I never said what season it was. So
yeah, we're going to leave it like that.
If anyone's listening,
they'll find out next week.
We're going to leave it open because I think they'll be surprised. I really do.
These first 3 were kind of easy to sniff out. Like,
oh, for sure. Especially this one. If you saw our first 2, you knew what was coming next.
You knew Thailand was coming next.
If you didn't listen, you're like, there's no way Thailand could crack anything.
Get out of the bottom 3.
Bottom 3, yeah. It's just, yeah. All right. So we will see you next week. All right.